Today on the show, strategy plus action equals transforming your business in one session. Great coaches and consultants like you have the ability to change people's lives and transform entire organizations. And your impact can often go far beyond the clients you work with. One of the reasons I love working with coaches and consultants is because of that ripple effect. This show is here to highlight your expertise and empower you with resources and new ideas to grow your business. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Kimberly Lebbing is on the show today, and we have an amazing conversation here for you around this idea of, these blocks that we feel are holding us back somehow in our business. Sometimes they're just showing up in business, right? We can't scale past a certain point, or, our calendars are completely full and yet we feel like we're getting nothing done. They show up in these different ways. And what Kimberly helps people do is first dig in and see what's really causing this, getting past the maybe external circumstances and digging into what's really behind all of this. And she has an amazing superpower of being able to have a single 4-hour session with her clients that quite literally transforms their life and business. It's an amazing thing that she's been able to do time and time again. You can go to her site and, see these amazing testimonials from people. And she really has this ROI-focused approach to it, in the sense that she knows that during one of these sessions with her, that person going through that, they really are going to transform their business. She tells a couple of stories in this episode of just amazing results in her clients' businesses, yes, but then what's so extra rewarding for her and for them is how that shows up in their personal life as well, and their loved ones seeing those results, and so much so they comment on them. They see the vast difference, and it's so important that first we are introspective enough to say, like, okay, I keep hitting this same wall. Something's going on. I need to figure this thing out, whatever that may be. And then to be able to take that action and seek out someone like Kimberly, and specifically Kimberly, and to really get help in this area. I know you're going to love this episode and all the aspects of these different blocks that show up in our lives that Kimberly helps her clients with. All right, let's jump in. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jason. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, of course. This is going to be a fun conversation. I know it already from our first call that we had. There's so many juicy things to dive into with all of this when it comes to, yes, it's business. We're talking, getting things right in your business, how you run it. But it's so internal. It's so critical that there are things that you get aligned in order for that business to flow. And I really wanted to have you on today to really dig into this topic of, sure, being stuck in your business, because I know you see that a lot of times is they're hitting a wall, right? They've been able to be successful to a point, and then every time they try to scale past that, there's a block. And I love digging into this and making this concept even more known for folks, because it can be such an external thing, because a business owner who is constantly hitting this wall, they've taken this action, and then the wall. Well, it's still external. It's like these things did happen, right?
Right.
So they point there, and then that's where you come in with all of this to really go, okay, well, there's a why behind this stuff, and let's dig in and find it. So I'm super excited to have you on the show and talk about this topic. I want to give folks, some geography around that and really get into your background a little bit and what's led you to this place and your, amazing superpower that you have on how you help folks. So give us a little background there. What's gotten you to this place?
So I'm a mindset coach, for those that haven't heard that yet. I've been doing this for a number of years. So I actually started out as a health coach. And I don't even know if I told you that when we had talked before, but what I came to realize in doing that is people that had the biggest health issues, it went back to mindset first. So I over time gradually shifted over to mindset. I started studying neuro-linguistic programming like 8 years ago and became obsessed with it in an effort to fix myself. That's why a lot of us do what we do. I grew up in a house that was, my parents were super young and my dad was verbally abusive. So, and he just didn't know. It was how he was raised. And so that really affected me, though, as an entrepreneur. I also got the entrepreneurial gene from my parents because they were both very entrepreneurial. And so I'm grateful for that. However, I kept getting to a certain level, couldn't fix it, couldn't get past it. And so that's why I started studying what I'm studying. And what I do now is the only thing that worked for me. So, and I did so many things, podcasts and books and seminars and counseling and all kinds of things. And I just couldn't get past it. So that's kind of the backstory.
I love that too, because, it's a similar thing, even for the folks who are introspective and they do like let in the fact that, okay, I'm doing something, right? I own it. But what?
Right.
What's going on here? And, it's so common, and not that it's wrong, but it's so common to just hear like, oh, you're just afraid. It's fear talking. It's fear. It's this and that, as this blanket diagnosis to everything. And I've been in that situation for years of just like, what is going on? And I let that in, right? Am I afraid of failing? No, I don't give two craps what anybody thinks. Okay, so am I afraid of success? So, no, that's not. So I let those things in, but like you, trying all these different things and being open to it, and it still isn't the thing. It still isn't answering that. So I can totally relate, and from the folks that I've talked to as well, there's a lot of people who can, who don't accept that blanket. Just, oh, you're just afraid. Like,
right.
No, something's going on and I don't know what it is. So I love that. And I love that you're digging in and you found a solution. So NLP is kind of what allowed you to fix your own situation. I say fix, but like diagnose and get through and work past. And then, so can you share some of that of what you discovered in that, even just for yourself, of what kind of worked?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had already been doing a lot of work. I was doing like affirmations, and I had gotten really far. Just with my own self-discovery. I mean, as an entrepreneur, one reason I love working with entrepreneurs is they're open to the personal growth. They understand how incredibly important it is in order to grow your business. You have to have that piece. And that journey for me, when I discovered NLP and how quickly it could shift, that was key for me because it was quick. It was almost, I don't want to say instantaneous, but sort of, because we're like, if you've seen the movie Shrek, we're an onion. We have layers. So there were lots of layers to what I was dealing with. However, each layer was like instantaneous shift. And I didn't have to keep trying, which was, it's just different. So what I did for years was try and be more consistent, tried and not procrastinate, try and, do all these things. But it was like I was working against myself. And you pegged it as I didn't know what it was. Like I knew there was something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And this process helped me discover what was really there. And the problems I had. One of them, if you want me to share, one of the things that I struggled with is, I'm a mom, have a family, and I had a problem with, I saw it as two different things, like making money and having a family, like conflicted. And it was a subconscious program. And once I discovered what that was and where it came from, my parents divorced. Like after they were successful, they divorced. There was all kinds of reasons behind it. That wasn't the only one. But once I was able to be made aware of that core reason, then I was able to subconsciously fix it and shift the way that belief was held. And then, it was almost instantaneously. I was like, oh, now I'm making money. So sometimes it's things that you wouldn't think were related that are really the problem.
Oh yeah, and I definitely want to get into some examples that you found for folks, because I think there's so many ahas that come from that, that allow people to go, oh wow, that number one, that's actually causing that problem in a business, but also, oh, it stems from this. It doesn't have to be big, giant, traumatic things. It's just these little, it can be the tiniest moment that doesn't affect, the other 100 kids your same age, but for some reason in your wiring, the way you take that in as a little soul, you attach meaning to it and it becomes truth, and then you build all this stuff. And of course, you don't remember that now consciously, but when those things are in there, it's wild, the programming, the self-programming even that we can have and aren't aware of. I do want to make sure that I'm taking for granted, people understand what NLP is and all of that. Give folks a little breakdown, because there's, it's one of those things too that's just like there's amazing positive aspects. People have negative connotations. People have there's a gamut there for sure. But educate us a little bit on that.
Yeah, I will. And I have, just side note, I've had the negative experience with it as well. So, and we don't have to go into that today, but I have had both. So neuro-linguistic programming, the most common definition I see is that it's a study of excellence within yourself. So neuro meaning literally the way your brain is wired, the programming that you've received. The linguistic part is your internal language, along with the language that you take in every day. It's the self-talk, it's how you grew up, it's all of it. And then the programming is how that affects your values, your beliefs, which ultimately affects your actions, because 80% of what we do is subconscious. We don't even think about that. And and that's where those beliefs, those values are all formed before the age of 7. And that's what comes out. That's what comes out in our behaviors. So that's the short definition.
Yeah, and it's so powerful too, because it's one of those things that I guess when people first learn about that and just the concept, the idea that we are in less control than we think, from the programming, even again self-programming aspect, it's overwhelming, and it's like, oh great, then what do I do? I have no control. Well, you immediately shift that that pendulum. But when you can let that sink in for a minute and go, okay, well, there's a way to get to that and reprogram and shift these things. Well, then that empowering feeling starts coming back, and then you can get excited about it, because oh, yes, it stinks that I've suffered from this, the results of this for several years. But there's a new option, a new choice from it. And that's everything. That's all we can do. And you talked about the layers and the onions of things, and that's a key distinction when it comes to to personal development overall is it really is just it's getting better and it's getting better, and then you take in new stuff and you get better at that. There's never an end, right?
Right.
There's an end to, maybe some issues and not struggling with this thing, which is great. But there'll be more issues. There'll be other things coming in. But instead of like, oh my gosh, there's no end, it's more like, oh, there's no end because I get to keep getting better again and again and again. And that's the exciting, maybe that's the optimist in me, but that's the exciting part of that to me. And so give us some examples, if you would, of some folks who, you just surprised the heck out of them from when you came in and started working with them, and they were in that, they were stuck, they don't know what's going on, and, just some of those stories. And of course, we know we keep everybody anonymous and all that stuff, but just the idea and the story of them.
Yeah.
We want names and we want addresses. We want...
So later, if anyone ever goes to my website, I've got testimonials and things on there. Other than the videos, and I obviously volunteered. Everybody else, I changed their name. Or we only use a first name. So I typically don't blast somebody's name out there anyway. So, but the stories are real. So as far as a surprising person or surprising client that I worked with, I think about one of my very first people that I worked with who, he came to me because he was inconsistent in his business. And he had more than one business, but there was like this inconsistency that kept showing up. In fact, I still remember he said, I'm consistently inconsistent was the main problem. And he was surprised because his main problem, or the main core of why he was inconsistent, came from an event that happened like years and years and years ago. And this one actually didn't go back to before the age of 7. It was something that happened within their family, that they had gone through counseling. Like, there was a lot of family healing, a lot of relationship healing, but there was also a lot of guilt. And he had no clue that was still showing up. It was still showing up in his business. And there was almost like this, I don't deserve this sort of thing going on, mindset-wise, that was kind of an underlying thing. And he had no clue that was still the problem, because they had already resolved it. Like, everybody was, like, the family was good, the relationships were good. They had done all that work, but subconsciously that thing attached. And it was, his filter, his internal filter was going through that, and that was causing the inconsistency. What was really cool about this story is this guy, I know I have a shorter process, 4 hours. So he did 1 4-hour session. And within a year, he actually developed a whole other company. And in that company, he had he was on track to do 7 figures, over $1 million in his first year with this other company. Yeah, it was incredible.
Wow.
I was even surprised because, like I said, he was one of my first clients, and I'm like, whoa, all of that. And he talks about how healing that was for him, just that whole experience, because he was no longer feeling held back.
That's incredible. And this really is the perfect story to dig in on several layers, right? Because number one is this concept of, I've dealt with that. Oh, I already know that. I dealt with it. I thought I was past this. And then you beat yourself up for not doing so, like, oh, it's coming up again. And there's several layers to that. And I don't know. Somebody I follow, Kyle Cease, and he was the first one, even just within the last few months, that put this idea at the forefront for me, was that not beating yourself up from that.
Right.
And to really go, okay, well, it needed to be there again. It needed to come up again. It needed to still be dealt with. Something in you needed to do that. Just be there for that. Like, it's okay, but I know I've experienced that. Like, what is going on? Like, getting emotional about something that's like, I've dealt with this. Like, I've had that exact thought.
Yep.
And then letting that in and go, okay, it's all right. Like, okay, it needs to happen again for some reason, But then also with this example you just gave, for our audience too, what is the correlation, right? Like, he's got these feelings. Like, how does that, affect the business? Is it from an energetic level that he's projecting and this stuff is happening, or is it causing him subconsciously to make these decisions that are just going to be horrible for his business because of that guilt? Like, how does that manifest itself?
Short answer is both, because energetically, he was in guilt and shame, which is, lower energetically. If you were, I know we talked about this before too, but it's lower on the scale energetically. And whenever you're projecting those out, if that's like your core, you're not going to attract what you want. You're going to attract what you don't want. And scarcity and all of those other things, the beating yourself up shows up. There's all of that, even though it wasn't showing up with him consciously, subconsciously it was. And so his behaviors, because his internal filter was guilt, shame, and there was almost I don't deserve this. So money-wise, there was like I don't deserve this because I let these things happen. And that was it was a record playing. And that, of course, affected his behaviors. He wasn't consistent. He wasn't, and he was limiting himself a lot because he's absolutely brilliant, as we saw. So over the coming year, he was absolutely brilliant, but it wasn't showing through because of those filters, and he wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, that's the maybe the scariest part. Of the biggest thing is just having no idea. That's the most frustrating part too, as somebody who goes with their gut and does this and is going through the motions and feels the thing, and like, I'm listening to you, but like, what is it then? What am I supposed to do? How, they're open, but there's, everything they're trying isn't working. So I love this fact that to get into that core. There was another, it seemed like a common theme that you had mentioned before that you find with folks on the people pleasing side of things. Talk to me about that and how that kind of shows up with somebody, especially as it relates to to their business and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a common one I see, and there's a common reason behind it, but it's not always the same core reason. An example of somebody that is doing a lot of this, I'll see an overwhelming schedule, where their schedule's always full, but they don't feel like they're getting anywhere. They're saying yes to everything and then resenting it. I think about a client I worked with who, her and her husband owned a trucking company together, and that was part of her problem. She was people pleasing on so many levels, and then resenting it. So, an employee, she was like at the beck and call of everybody. So employees that would need something, she'd drop everything. And our husband needed something, would drop everything. And what was happening is her schedule was full. She was constantly putting out fires. That's something I see. They're always putting out fires, but never really getting ahead. And then being resentful. So because they said yes to things that maybe they shouldn't have, or they stayed in conversations longer than maybe they should have, because they didn't want to hurt the other person's feelings. So there's all these other pieces, and it absolutely affected their business. I mean, that's the one that I see that affects the business probably the most obviously. Usually the people pleasers know that they're people pleasers. So they know it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one too, because and this is kind of a new, I mean, not brand new, but I guess digging into it as much as I have recently, because I mean, I'm too much of a jerk. I'm not a people pleaser at all. Like, it's never been a thing for me. Like, it's just like, hey, I want to talk to you. Nope. You know, like I've never had a problem with that, right? So it's new, but it's also a tricky one because what's wrong with that? You know, I'm sure is like at the, you know, again, another very pervasive aspect of it. It's just like, I'm doing a good thing by helping all these people. What's wrong with that? And I'm sure that's what drives all of it. And if somebody if there is pushback from someone like that, how do you respond to that with them?
So usually when people are coming to me, like it's been a problem and they're done, like they're ready for something else. So I typically don't get pushback on it, to be honest. I don't, because they're like, okay, I know this is a problem. It keeps showing up and it's affecting my goals. It's affecting my ability to get to the next level that I want to get to. And I'd really like to stop doing it. So they're aware. They're very aware. And yes, it can be for good things, but just because it's good doesn't mean you should do it all. I mean,
right.
It doesn't.
Yeah. It's not good long term, right? In the full really helping everyone, because sometimes saying no to that person is both good for them as well as you and the situation overall.
Yeah, and most of them know that when they really think about it, their intention on saying, when they're still in that people pleasing mode, their intention when saying yes is to please the other. It's not, and it's almost like to make themselves feel better or more valued or something to those lines. It's not in an effort to, okay, I truly feel like I want to help you. I mean, there is that, but it's a little bit different. It doesn't feel the same. It's not the same energy.
Yeah, it's more, maybe not always this bad, but it's more the look at me, look what I'm doing, look how I'm helping, a little bit more than it is like, oh, I just want to help, right?
Yeah. There's different layers to it. So there's a fear of, and this is where it can go back and be tricky. Like, what was it? There could be a fear of letting somebody down. And I've seen this show up as, it could have been a coach back in, grade school that, maybe strong arm the team or, don't let us down and just drilled that in, something like that. The client I was talking about, that was a playground incident of, group of girls that wasn't, I don't know, I think it had to do with something she was wearing. I mean, it was very random, but that it sunk in, like you said, you never know what it's going to be. It's not always a trauma event. Sometimes it's just something very random, normal, that insignificant. You think it's very insignificant, yet it ends up playing into every behavior we do. And as a result, they don't get what they want.
Right. Oh yeah, big time. So what is sort of the beginning of your process with them? Because that's the first thing that comes to my mind is just like, okay, well, in the sea of experiences that we have, how do we possibly, get to what's going on here? And even just generally, like, how do you find the starting place and kind of go from there?
Well, my very first step in my process is identifying what the real problem is. And examples of like the trucking company co-owner that I just talked about. She came to me because she was frustrated and overwhelmed. She didn't come to me because she had this underlying guilt and thing that were going on. So people don't always know what it is. Somebody that's wanting to grow their business, scale, hire employees, but they can't. I've found that sometimes that's related to trust. So not always, but that's, one of the underlying issues. So that's the very first thing, is identifying what that core problem is and just digging a little deeper. One of my superpowers, I will call it, is a lot of times just by listening to people talk, I've already connected the dots far before they have. And so that, and that's, I guess the challenge for me is I have to lead them into them seeing it. So, and I'm actually, it's 4 hours, so pretty good at that part too. But that's the piece, is a lot of times I will see it because I recognize it in their language, both body language, their verbal, like what they're saying, where I can connect it far before they see it. I see it before they see it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love this too, because this also speaks to even broader coaches, consultants, things like that, of when you come into a situation with someone or an organization, hopefully you do see before they do, right?
Right.
But that's why you're there, but that doesn't mean it's easy to do that, like, by any means. It comes from having done this so much and being so in tune with language patterns and how they're holding themselves. And I love that it really is a superpower. It really is something that I think is amazing, that you can, for maybe lack of a better word, diagnose, and guide them through. And then but that second part that you talk about is absolutely critical, is guiding them to that place, or where when they see it and they have the realization. Because if you sat down, even if you knew it in the first 30 seconds, and you're just like, here's the thing that happened, here's what you need to get over it, like, like, that's not gonna, like,
I would see wall. They would not.
Exactly. You talk about, like, and I think that's just as much a superpower, and maybe a more nuanced one, that you have, and that, any great coach will have, but that you have to guide them on the path and lead them down. Because I imagine too, then you can sort of see, like, oh, it's probably this kind of thing in the past that's happened, and then finding those questions that guide them, that are going to allow them, that are going to trigger a memory, an experience, all of that they hadn't thought about in forever. Right. Probably.
Right. And I want to interrupt for a minute, because I want to make sure that this is not like counseling. So when I say we come up with stuff from before the age of 7, a lot of times I know vaguely what it was, but I don't know the details, and I don't have to. So I think that's important to know, because I'm not a therapist. Wild. I'm not like it's not like that. Well, when I was 3, I remember. It's not that. It's really them connecting the dots for themselves, knowing like how that program was made for the purpose of rewiring it. So that's the main purpose behind all of it. But I will often stop people if they go into stories, if they're going into too much of that. Like, I have to have some knowledge, but not. I don't need all the bits and pieces of it.
Yeah,
because I don't want them to relive it.
Exactly, and I think that's kind of the issue with some therapy. If people stay in that, like, oh, this thing happened, it was bad, and yes, it caused this and this. And then it's just like, well, that's my identity. Like,
right.
Then you don't get out of that, because then it's a story,
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And the more visceral you get and remember it and like, oh yeah, and I felt this way. And well, you're just anchoring all of that in even more, instead of what you're talking about is
Right.
like, okay, this thing happened, and now let's go through the process and
Yeah. Too much of that, they
disconnect it.
create, just talking about energy levels, they create a victim energy. I don't even want to say victim mindset, but there's a victim energy around those stories. And it's really a fine line. And when you're in that victim energy, it's really hard to shift. So that's another piece. That's another superpower that I have, is shifting people out of that victim energy into taking ownership and being able to move, being open to different possibilities.
Yeah, that's great. It's something you talked about from in the very beginning too, which is even on your journey of, you know, in the past was like, okay, I need to do this better. I'll try this. I'll try that. And when that goes away, and I imagine this has a lot to do with, you know, sort of your end result with folks, when it's an identity shift, like when you can flip that switch, I mean, that's everything.
Yes.
Right? Because then, you know, it's not willpower. It's not a decision you have to make over and over again. It's just, I've had a couple of those for myself that, like, that's not who I did that with sugar, right? Like I did that with, like, you know, a few years ago now. And it just like, and I was the biggest, like, I mean, I took everybody else's, like, oh, you're not going to eat that icing? Bring that icing, you know. And
I can relate to that.
Yeah. I didn't understand. People was like, sweets don't really do anything for me. Like, you're a crazy person, you know? So, and then I wanted that gone, and it was a shift. And I try to convey to people that that's actually so much easier than cutting back. Oh, sometimes I will. Maybe this is who and when you can apply that to even way more maybe important things in life,
right?
Of just like, I'm not that I don't do that. I'm this person who doesn't do that, or who does this. I mean, that's everything, because it's way easier for me to never eat sugar than it would be if, like, okay, well, it's Monday. Maybe I'll do a donut today, and then the rest of the, oh my gosh, that sounds exhausting, right? And we've all been there. We all have that version, that identity shift. I imagine that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a big piece of this that they come out of this process with.
Yes. And I have one of the last steps I do with people. Well, it's not the last step, but in that 4-hour process, I work with people longer than 4 hours, but in that specific thing, one of the very last things we do is getting them into action. And really, it's like putting in new software. So it's like, if you think of a laptop or computer, you know, we remove the virus, the lie, the thing that they were believing, and then we put in a new belief, and something that they're congruent with, something that they want to be doing. And when you do that after you've cleaned up, you know, that filter, it's really powerful, and the action takes place immediately. And it's automatic. It's not having to try. I don't have to try to not be a people pleaser anymore. Now I value my business, my family, my, you know, whatever it is. And those are the things that I put in first. And I can politely say no without the guilt.
Oh, yeah. That's everything. Because it's one thing, like, if you've ever had, I guess, at any level of compulsion, addiction, maybe the OCD, sort of like, I have to, like, that driving, I have to do that you can't get out of. I mean, that applies to what we're talking about. That applies to people pleasing, to hitting that wall and not letting in. And when you can get to the core of that and switch that, that's magic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's life changing.
It is. It's priceless. I have coaches too. So one of my coaches in the transformation space says all the time the work we do is priceless, really, because it changes so many different facets. Whenever your business and your personal stuff is related, you think you can separate it. You have a separate bank account, you have a separate building you go to, maybe, or whatever those separations are, but up here they're the same. So it's whatever's going on in the personal relationship space, past or present. I've been through a divorce, I've been through this, I've been through that, or bad business deal. Those things are filtering through into your current business, and they're filtering through to your relationships.
Yeah, and everybody's different. You can maintain for different lengths of time. Some people can keep those things siloed and build a successful business, and while their personal life crumbles down. But it's always to a point, right? It's always you're going to hit something, and it may be just on your personal life. It all comes crashing down, but even on that business side, it's going to filter through. And I think I would argue that there's, as successful as you are, maybe, and you haven't handled those things, boy, you could have been so much further
right
too. Even imagine what you could have done with this stuff cleared out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah, and one of my most favorite side effects that I see from people is, they'll come to me because they're frustrated in their business. They want to get to another level. They, this or that, but it's usually business related. But then I get a text that'll say, "Oh my gosh, my wife noticed. I'm not as frustrated anymore, and my wife noticed."
That's awesome.
Yeah. My relationships are better. So that's just a side effect, and that speaks to my heart of what I do because of the way I grew up. I know that those things are really important. At the end of the day, while we're here on this earth, it's, whether you realize it or not, it's about the relationships we have and the people that are in our lives. So money making aside, that's really what it's all about. But I help people make more money, so it's all cool.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty. Like it's all
connected.
Oh yeah, it's like, let's do it all. Let's have amazing relationships, amazing experiences, make a lot of money so we can have even more experiences with those great relationships. It's all this beautiful, wonderful cycle. I love it. So who needs to reach out? Who needs to find Kim and have her change their world?
Yeah. So like I said, I work with business owners, typically entrepreneurs. They've usually been in business for a little bit, because in the beginning, you're just still figuring stuff out. You don't know that it's your own self holding yourself back yet. But usually people that have been in business for a little while. And also I work with sales teams too. So people that have teams, that's just another side note. Those are good people too, but they feel, whoever they are, they feel like they have been stuck, or they want to get to another level and they just haven't been able to do it. So maybe they've been sitting at the same space for a while, the same income level, and just haven't been able to get there despite all the effort.
I love it. And if they're ready, this is me, I need to talk to Kim, how do they do so?
So I'm on all the socials. So, you can reach out to me, Kimberly Lebbing, on any of the socials, but they can also go to my website, kimberlylebbing.com, and they can connect with me there. There's free resources there. You can book a call there. We do discovery sessions. I host groups also. Currently the one I'm hosting is full, but there'll be more coming. So you can go to the website for updates.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on. This has been a blast and eye-opening as well.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it. And it's been it's been a great conversation.
Yes, indeed. Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you want help creating authority building video content or even a client generating show of your own, go to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy in Action.